Welcome to LIVEDAF, your online Daf Yomi Shiur.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, which is Shabbos, Daf Kuf Nun Zayin. We are on Daf Kuf Nun Vav on our base, 2 lines from the bottom, and in the midst of our discussion regarding Muktzah. Rabbi Yehuda has a very broad application of Muktzah. He holds anything which is not prepared, which is undesignated for this use, cannot be used on Shabbos. For instance, an animal which died on Shabbos. So since at the onset of Shabbos, during Bein HaShmashos, it was meant for human consumption, it was Muchan La'adam. One doesn't feed his behemoth to a kelev unnecessarily, so it's designated for human consumption. So therefore, even now that it died and it is only suitable to be fed to dogs, for instance, it cannot be used for this purpose since at the onset of Shabbos it wasn't prepared and designated for this purpose. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, lacking preparedness, lacking hachana, renders it muktzah. Whereas according to Rabbi Shimon, we don't have this broad application of muktzah. He holds only something which is inherently useless, something which is deficient due to an internal element within the object itself. For instance, a pebble, a rock, which is inherently useless. That is muktzah, but something which is merely lacking that positive element of achana, of designation, of preparedness, that doesn't make it muktzah. So the summary here is that according to Rabbi Yehuda, we need that positive element of achana in order to allow its use. According to Rabbi Shimon, as long as it's not deficient, it is mutter. Says the Gemara, 2 lines from the bottom, on Kufnum Vavam Beis, V'af Rabbi Yochanan, and also Rabbi Yochanan, Omar Halacha Rabbi Shimon. He also holds that the halacha follows Rabbi Shimon's view of muktzah. Says the Gemara, Umi Omar Rabbi Yochanan Hachi. Is that so? That Rabbi Yochanan maintains that the halacha follows Rabbi Shimon's view? V'Omar Rabbi Yochanan, did Rabbi Yochanan tell us halacha k'stam mishnah? The halacha follows a stam mishnah. What exactly is a stam mishnah? It's an anonymous mishnah. Rebbe HaKadosh, with all of the Talmidei Chacham who were present at that time, when they edited the Mishnayos, they did it in a way, in a manner which will indicate to us very often what the halacha is. So if there was a view, a shita which they concurred with, they wanted that to become the established halacha. They recorded it as a stam mishnah without any name attached to it, without any machlokes. And this will indicate to us that the halacha is meant to follow that view. So Rabbi Yochanan taught us that the halacha follows a stam mishnah. Now we actually have a stam mishnah which concurs with the shita of Rabbi Yehuda and Muktzah. Utnan, and we learned in the mishnah, ein mevaken eitzim min hakoros. If one has koros, these beams, these wooden beams which were set up for construction, one cannot chop them into firewood to use them for fuel on Yom Tov because they were designated for construction. Nor can he use for firewood this koira, this beam within the home which broke on Yom Tov because it wasn't pre-designated for this purpose. At the commencement of Yom Tov, at the Bein HaShmashos point, it wasn't meant to be used as firewood. So we see that lacking hachana, lacking designation, makes it muktzah, in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda. And this is a stam mishnah. Says the Gemara, actually it's not. Rabbi Yochanan, hahu, Rabbi Yehuda masna. He had a different version of that mishnah. He had a girsa that mishnah is actually attributed to a shita, to a view of Rabbi Yehuda. He's the author of that mishnah. And therefore it's not really a stam mishnah, and not necessarily do we have to follow that shita. Tashma, come and listen to the following raya from another mishnah in Meseches Beya, which seems to be a stam mishnah, in accordance with shita of Yehuda and Muktzah, that lacking hachana is asur. Maschilim b'aremas hateven. So we have a arema, a pile of straw. One can begin, meaning using it for the first time. If he wants to use it for fueling, for firewood, so you can use this hay for his fueling purposes on Yom Tov. But he can't begin using the eitzim, the wood which is sitting in the muktzah. This is the outdoor storage area. He can't begin using this on Yom Tov because that wood was sitting there meant to be used in the winter time. So it wasn't designated for current use. So you can't begin use of those pieces of wood on Yom Tov. So you see, that's something which was undesignated, unprepared for current use. It's muktzah, and it's a stam mishnah. Says the Gemara, Hasam, the situation there is totally different. Hasam ba'arzi v'ashuchi. We're speaking about wood of high quality, different types of cedar wood, which are not meant to be used for fueling, for firewood. It's meant to be used for construction. The muktzah machmas chasor and kiss. Afilu Reb Shimon moide. This is an example of something which was muktzah due to its high value. A person would not deviate from its designated use. A person would not divert it for inappropriate use. It's meant to be used for its designated purpose, for construction. A person would not misuse it due to its value, due to the loss of property. He's not going to want to just waste this precious wood as firewood. So even Reb Shimon agrees that is muktzah. Because here the limitation is due to an internal element, an internal facet within that wood, within this object. This thing is not meant to be used inappropriately. So even Reb Shimon would agree that this is muktzah. Tashma, come and listen to the following raya from another Mishnah, a Stam Mishnah, Maseches Beya, which seems to follow Rabbi Yehuda. A mashkin v'sheichtin is a midbaris. The midbaris are animals, behemoths which spend their time out in the wilderness and are not designated for current use. So even though they belong to him, but his mind, his das, is not to use it, it's considered to be muktzah. So one can be mashke, they used to give the animal to drink prior to shechita to allow easy removal of the skin. So in mashkin v'sheichtin is a midbaris, these animals which are in the wild, which are undesignated for current use. Aval, mashkin v'sheichtin is a bayosais. One can do this to animals which are more domesticated, they come sleep within the area, and they are designated for current use. So at any rate, we see that something which is not muchan is muktzah. And this is a Stam Mishnah. So why does Rabbi Yochanan hold like Rabbi Shimon? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan Stam Achrina Ashkach. Rabbi Yochanan actually found another Mishnah which is a Stam Mishnah, which follows Rabbi Shimon's view. Rashi points out that what he meant to say is that Stam Achrina means a shita of Beis Hillel. We found that Beis Hillel concurs with Rabbi Shimon, and the opinion of Rabbi Shimon to us has value like a Stam Mishnah, because the shita of Beis Hillel carries more weight, is the authoritative opinion. We always generally follow the shita of Beis Hillel. Since we find that Beis Hillel concurs with Rabbi Shimon's opinion in muktzah, so that's how we follow. Where do we find this Beis Hillel? We have a Mishnah, which we actually learned earlier in Daf Kuf Mem Gimel, Beis Shammai Oimrim Magbiyin Me'al HaShulchan. One can remove from his table, he can directly interact with this muktzah atzama siklipen, the bones and the peels, which are suitable for animal feed. So one can remove it from his table without any concern. It's not muktzah, it's useful, it can serve it to his animals. No, he can't directly contact it, he has to remove it, but in an indirect manner. How does he remove the bones and the peels and the shells? He goes and takes the tavla kula, this entire table board, removes the entire board, and Menara shakes off the items. So you can't directly interact with this thing because it's muktzah. Why is it muktzah? Because originally this bone was embedded in a piece of flesh, in a piece of meat. It was considered to be part of the ma'achal adam, the human food. Now when it became separated, and it's only useful for an animal, it underwent a transition. It changed its status. And that took place on Shabbos or Yom Tov. So since at the entry point of Shabbos, this thing was not considered animal feed, it was part of the human food, therefore it's considered to be muktzah, because it's lacking that hachana. It wasn't designated for animal feed. So this appears to be the shita of Beis Hillel. Therefore he can't touch this thing, it's muktzah. He needs to shake it off in an indirect manner. Whereas Beis Shammai, he can directly interact with this because it's useful. He can take the shells, the klipin, the atzamayis, and feed it to his animal. There's nothing muktzah about it. The fact that it wasn't unprepared for this use, it's irrelevant. So Beis Shammai seems to be following Shitas Reb Shimon. Now, one thing here, we don't follow this version, this gears of the Mishnah. Rather, we switch things around. Ela Beis Shammai Reb Yehuda. Actually, Beis Shammai are the ones who say you can't directly interact with the bones. You must shake them off indirectly, because they hold like Rabbi Yehuda. That lack of preparedness is considered to be muktzah, and therefore you can't directly move it. Beis Hillel Reb Shimon. Actually, it's Beis Hillel who hold like Reb Shimon that this is not muktzah due to its ability to be fed to an animal, and therefore you can directly remove the bones and these peels from the table. So here we have Beis Hillel, who is the final authority, who hold like Reb Shimon, and indeed that's why Rabbi Yochanan preferred this approach, and he ruled the paskin like Reb Shimon with regard to muktzah. Concludes the Gemara. What is the halacha l'maisa? Pligiba Rav Acha Ravina. There was a machlekes between Rav Acha and Ravina as follows. Chad Amar, one of them said, B'chol Shabbos kula, throughout the halachas of Shabbos, halacha Reb Shimon, in all halachas we follow Reb Shimon, levar mi muktzah machmas miyos. So in all aspects of muktzah we follow Reb Shimon's lenient approach, except for one thing, muktzah machmas miyos, something which is muktzah due to its repulsiveness. Umayni, what is this example? Example of this, ner yoshan, a pre-used earthenware lamp which is repulsive, it absorbs the oil, it's greasy, it's considered to be mos. So due to its inherent repulsiveness, which is an internal facet of the object itself, so the uselessness here stems from the deficiency of the actual chayfetz. So when it comes to this, we do consider it to be muktzah. So in all other things we follow Reb Shimon's view, except for muktzah machmas miyos, which is an extreme case of muktzah. The other view the other shita held, we're speaking about Rav Acha and Ravina, so the other madama held, b'muktzah machmas miyos nami, halach Reb Shimon. Even when it comes to muktzah machmas miyos, we follow Reb Shimon's approach. It's not muktzah. He has a personal preference to avoid this kli. It's not inherently useless. There's nothing wrong with it. So it's not muktzah. So we follow Reb Shimon, except for one thing. Levar me muktzah machmas isur. Except for this category of muktzah machmas isur. What is that? Ner shel liki bo beis Shabbos. This lamp which was used on that Shabbos. So this lamp is muktzah machmas isur. It served as a support to the flame. So it's muktzah due to the fact that it was involved with isur, malacha, and that thing is muktzah. And even we consider that to be muktzah. Because here the deficiency is due to a halachic factor. It was part of a lamp, part of a flame, it was being used for malacha, whatever the reason here is, it is a halachic consideration which contributes to its deficiency. It's not merely his personal preference, like something which is mos. It's something which is inherent in the object itself, and it's a halachic factor here. Therefore, we consider this to be off limits and muktzah on Shabbos. So in all areas of muktzah we follow Reb Shimon, except for muktzah machmas isur. Concludes the Gemara, but you meant to know that there's one class of muktzah where even Reb Shimon agrees, and this is what we mentioned earlier. Muktzah machmas chesar, kiss, something, an object of high value, which a person hesitates to misuse, lest it get damaged due to its delicateness and fragility. So in that case, even Reb Shimon agrees that it's muktzah. I feel Reb Shimon might, because this is something inherent within the object itself that precludes its use for other purposes, for non-malacha purposes. So here even Reb Shimon agrees. The Snan is learned in the Mishnah. All types of utensils can be moved on Shabbos, even something which is designated for malacha. So we're following Reb Shimon's shita, and the Mishnah stipulates chutz mimaser hagadol, except for moving this large size saw which is used for carpentry. So a person would not divert it for other use. V'yaseh shemachresha, this pointy part of this metal portion of the machresh of the plow, which again is delicate and something which is of high value, which should not be diverted for other use on Shabbos. Therefore, even Reb Shimon would agree in this case that one may not use these items on Shabbos. So in summary, we have various types of muktzah. We have muktzah machmas, meaning due to the fact that it's not prepared, it's eini muchan. We have muktzah machmas miyos, due to its repulsiveness. Muktzah machmas isser. We have muktzah machmas chesar and kiss, something of high value, which you wouldn't divert for other use. We actually have one more category which is not mentioned here, but is mentioned earlier in the Masechta, which is something which is inherently useless, like a pebble, like coins, which is called muktzah machmas gufay. Rav Yehuda maintains all these things are muktzah. Reb Shimon maintains everything is mutter except for chesar and kiss, and gufay, which is something which is deficient on account of its inherent deficiency. Regarding halacha l'maisa, Rabbi Yochanan passes like Reb Shimon. The Gemara concluded that halacha like Reb Shimon, except for either muktzah machmas miyos, or according to the other opinion, muktzah machmas isser. Continues the Mishnah. Mafirin nedarim b'Shabbos. So hafaras nedarim is where the husband nullifies the neder, the vow that his wife makes. Torah gives him the ability, the privilege to nullify that neder, and he can only do it b'yom shamay, on the actual day that he heard about the neder. So one can be mefer nedarim, the nedarim of his wife, on Shabbos. V'nisholen l'nedarim shein l'tzarech Shabbos. Likewise, a person could be shoyel, can go approach a chacham and ask, request of him to be matir his vow, provided that there's a Shabbos purpose. It's interfering with Shabbos. For instance, Rashi says he made a neder that he's not going to eat today. So he's allowed to approach a chacham to go ahead and be matir to permit that neder. Continues the Mishnah. One may plug, shutter the window on Shabbos using a shutter. So even though the shutter is not tied and suspended mid-air, which is the sheet of Rebbe Lezer, we learned earlier in the Kuf Chav Hey, this is the sheet of Rabbanan who allows shuttering, even using a non-tied shutter, because it appears like he's merely closing back the window. It doesn't look like he's building anything, so one can do that on Shabbos. One can measure a piece of material to determine its size, whether or not it is susceptible to tumah. One may measure a mikvah on Shabbos to determine whether it has the proper dimensions and is a kosher mikvah. Continues the Mishnah. There was a story b'mei aviv, in the lifetime of the father shel Rab Tzaddik, u'b'mei Abba Shol ben Batnis, and in the days of Abba Shol ben Batnis, that they encountered some situation which we described in the Gemara, which compelled them to perform three things. Number one, they did the shepakaku as amor b'tafiach. They took a tafiach, some sort of pach shel cheres, Rashi says, a earthenware kli, and they plugged up the window with it. Number two, they did v'kashor sam mekeda begemi. They tied a gemi on the mekeda. Mekeda is also some sort of kli cheres. So they tied this string, this reedgrass, on the mekeda. Why? Leda, in order to use it and determine with it, im yesh begigis, whether in the barrel which was lying there, which had a hole, a split, they wanted to determine the size of that hole. Leda, im yesh begigis peiseach tefach im lab, whether or not there's a tefach of width in that hole. So they used this kli, this mekeda, which was a tefach wide, and they lowered it through the hole to determine the size of the hole. Concludes the Mishnah, from their actions, we actually learned, shepaikikin, one may shutter a window, u'moidedin, one may measure if it is needed for a halachic reason, v'kaishim b'Shabbos, and one may tie on Shabbos if it is a temporary knot, and not a kesher shel kayam. Let's look at the Rashi inside, 25 lines from the top. Masnisen, says Rashi, mefirin, this is the beginning of the Mishnah, a baal li'ishta, a baal can be mefer for his wife's neder. That's the first item in the Mishnah. Then, v'nishon l'chacham, one may go and ask, approach a chacham, have him permit his neder, provided that it's l'tzarech Shabbos. Kigoyin shenoda sh'lo yilech al hayom, for instance, he made a vow not to eat today, so it's interfering with his Shabbos observance, so he can go ahead and attend to that neder. The Mishnah can continue to paikin samar, kirabanon de amri, paikin kakach haloim, one may shutter a window. Umoided in some mikvah, b'mida, can go ahead and measure the mikvah using some sort of measuring stick. She'esham omaik shalish amas mayim, to know whether it has the proper dimension, 3 amas of water in depth, v'reichav amal amma, and a width of an amma by amma, which is the proper dimension of a mikvah. So you can measure that. V'esamatlis, a piece of material, to determine shtei shalish al shalish its boys, whether it has 3 by 3 fingers width. Can go into Moiseh Tmeya. For instance, if it became Tomei, B'noga B'taris, and it touched something which was tar, you wanted to know whether this piece of material was actually Tomei, whether it had the proper dimensions. So one could measure these things on Shabbos. So generally, one is not meant to measure on Shabbos. It's considered to be Uda D'Choy, the weekday activity, but it's for the sake of halacha, for the sake of mitzvah, you can do it. So what did these people do? They plugged up the window b'tafiach, pach shel cheres. We find this term, tafiach, elsewhere in the Masechta. V'chaveroi b'perik yud zayin, zmoyer sheikshur b'tafiach, this branch tied to a tafiach, this bucket b'mal b'Shabbos, one can fill with it on Shabbos. And they tied the mikeda, which is another form of a klicheres, with a string. Leda, to determine if yesh begigis peiseach tefach, the Gemara Mefarish, the Gemara will explain for us in great detail. So we learned from them that one can plug a window, one can measure and tie. Something which is not a permanent knot can be done even l'chatchila. And one can measure l'islam al v'hara in order to derive a halachic factor. So for the sake of halacha of hayra, one can do that on Shabbos. Continues the Gemara. So we had in the beginning of the Mishnah hafaras nedarim, which is a husband who is attending to his wife's neder, and we have nish'olun nedarim, which in Maseches Nedarim is called hataras nedarim. We want to approach as a chacham with a request that he permit his nether. Now, the Mishnah split them into two: mefir nedarim b'Shabbos, and then nish'olun nedarim. So the Mishnah split them into two, and the Mishnah said shein l'tzorech haShabbos. So it can only be done if it's l'tzorech Shabbos. Now, we have a question in the Gemara. This limitation, that it can only be done if it's for the sake of Shabbos, for the benefit of Shabbos, does this apply to both halachas? To she'ela of chacham, as well as to the hafara of the Baal? Or do we say no? It only applies to hatara of the chacham, but not to a husband who is attending to his wife's nether. So they ask the following question. Hafara that a husband does to his wife, bein l'tzorech ubein shelo l'tzorech, can that be done whether it is for the sake of Shabbos or even if it is not for tzorech Shabbos? U'she'ela, it is only when it comes to she'ela, which is the person approaching the chacham, that we apply this limitation, l'tzorech in, shelo l'tzorech loy, that it can only be done for the sake, for the benefit of Shabbos, but otherwise not. U'mishim hachi, and that will be the reason. Kapal ginu mahadodya, the Mishnah separates the two categories. The Mishnah says, Befir and Dam Shabbos, that's A, because that applies under all circumstances, even if it's not for the sake and for the benefit of Shabbos. The Rashi will soon explain why we will be more lenient with the husband. But the Mishnah begins with that, and then proceeds with She'ela, which is a different category. And that can only be done on the Tzorech Shabbos. And that is the reason. The Mishnah splits it two halachas. Oidimo, perhaps, they're both one and the same. Hafara nami, l'tzorech in, shelo l'tzorech loy. Even when it comes to hafara of the husband to his wife's nether, that is only allowed when it is l'tzorech Shabbos, but otherwise not. Why then does the Mishnah split the two things? The reason why the Mishnah splits these two concepts from each other, Mishum, simply because they work differently. They're different methods of treating a nether. Mishum da hafara ain't tzorech bezin, because hafara doesn't require a bezin. A husband is fully capable of attending to his wife's nether. U'she'ela tzricha bezin, as opposed to she'ela, which needs a bezin, which Rashi says means a chacham. So since they're done differently, the Mishnah splits the two things, but halachically they're one and the same. Let's see Rashi inside, about 30 lines from the bottom. Gemara, iboilu hafara de masnisin. The hafara, which is mentioned now in Mishnah, is it bein l'tzorech, bein shelo l'tzorech haShabbos? Whether or not it's for the sake and benefit of Shabbos. Why would you say so? The gabe hafara b'yom shomeksiv, because the Torah tells us that hafara could only be done b'yom shomai, on the day that the Baal hears of the nether. So his time frame is very limited. If he doesn't take to it now, shuveni mefer, he's going to run out of time. Therefore, we have reason to allow him to nullify his wife's nether even on Shabbos, even if it's not for the sake of Shabbos. Because he's going to run out of time. So that's a leniency applied to hafara, as opposed to she'ela of a person walking over to a chacham, asking him to take care of his nether. She'ela l'tzorech in, shelo l'tzorech loy. Why? Because he has full ability to take care of this tomorrow. That's why the Mishnah splits these two categories from one another. Like Tani, the Mishnah doesn't simply lump them together in a fear and vinish sholin l'nedarim she'en tzorech haShabbos. The Mishnah decides to split them. Why? Because the word l'tzorech is only in reference ela she'ela, because hafara can be done regardless of whether it's l'tzorech Shabbos or not. So that's the question posed in the Gemara. Continues the Gemara. Toshma, come and listen to the Raya, the Tani Zuti Dvei Papi. So this person Zuti Dvei Papi taught us as follows: Mefir and Dam b'Shabbos. A husband may be made for his wife's nether on Shabbos, l'tzorech haShabbos, only if it's for the benefit of Shabbos, l'tzorech haShabbos. In, yes, shelo l'tzorech Shabbos, loy. It's very clear. It is only allowed for tzorech Shabbos. Continues the Gemara, Lishna Achrina. We have another version of events in our Gemara. So they ask the following question: l'tzorech atavayuk tani. When the Mishnah stipulates that it needs to be l'tzorech Shabbos, is it in reference to both cases? Hafara of the husband and haTorah of the chacham. So l'tzorech atavayuk tani u'sheloi l'tzorech loy. But if it's not for the sake of Shabbos, one cannot tend to a nether under all circumstances. Alma, apparently, hafaras nedar meisleis. So apparently, the time frame, the allowance that the Torah gives a Baal to be made for the nether of his wife stretches for a period of a full meisleis, a full 24-hour period. So there's no real need for him to tend to her nether today. He heard about the nether on Shabbos. He can wait till after Shabbos because he has a full 24-hour period to address his wife's nether. So that's why he cannot tend to it unless it's pertinent for Shabbos. For instance, she made a nether not to eat today. So that would allow him to tend to it, but otherwise not, because he has full ability to address it tomorrow, because he has a full 24-hour period to take care of it. So that's the first Sat in the Gemara. So you can only do it if it's Tzarech Shabbos because he still has plenty of time available. Or perhaps, when the Mishnah stipulates it needs to be Tzarech Shabbos, that is strictly in reference to She'ela. When a person approaches the Chacham. When it comes to Hafaras Nadarim, a husband to his wife, even if it's a Shaloi L'Tzarech Shabbos, one can tend to it. Why? Because, in contrast to the Chacham, who doesn't run out of time, he can approach the Chacham tomorrow, the next day. There's no deadline here. So we don't allow him to tend to it unless it's a Tzarech Shabbos. Now, incidentally, what's wrong with taking care of a nether on Shabbos? There are many approaches to the Mishnah here. Some say it looks like he's making a din Torah. Some say it looks like he's being a sak and fixing something. Some say it's a tircha. Some learn because it's like uvda the choyle, weekday activity. So we don't allow the chacham to tend to a nether unless it's l'tzorech Shabbos, because he has plenty of time available to take care of it after Shabbos. But Hafaras Nadarim, where it's only a limited time frame, and if he runs out of time, he's going to lose that opportunity. So even if it's shalei l'tzorech Shabbos, we allow him to do it. Alma, apparently, Hafaras Nadarim kol hayom. Hafaras Nadarim may only be executed the entire day. He doesn't have 24 hours. It's only up until the end of that particular day. So if he heard the nether on Shabbos, he can only do it until Motzei Shabbos. Afterwards, it's too late. So therefore, this is reason to allow him to tend to a nether, even if it's not directly impacting Shabbos. So according to this version of the Gemara, it's basically the same question. Is Hafaras Nadarim only applicable to something which is impacting Shabbos or not? But the Gemara added a new element to the equation. It is linked to the question of deadline. What is the time frame allowed for Hafaras Nadarim? Because if he has a full 24-hour period, then there's no special reason to allow him to take care of her nether on Shabbos if it doesn't impact Shabbos. Whereas if he only has a limited time frame up until the end of that day, then he must take to her nether on Shabbos, even if it doesn't impact Shabbos observance. Tashma, the Tani Rav Zuti Dvei Rav Papi, Befir Nadarim b'Shabbos. Shabbos. So he stipulates clearly that even a husband can only tend to his wife's nether if it is l'tzorech Shabbos. L'tzorech Shabbos in shloi l'tzorech Shabbos loy alma. So we deduce from here regarding the time frame of Hafaras Nadarim that what? Apparently the halacha is that he has 24 hours. Therefore, we don't allow him to tend to a nether which is not pertinent for Shabbos. Alma Hafaras Nadarim meis le'eis. Apparently, there's a 24-hour period which is granted to the husband to annul his wife's nether. And therefore there's no reason to grant him a special privilege to tend to his wife's nether which doesn't impact Shabbos. Amar Rav Ashi, is that the case? That has 24 hours? V'nantnan, we learned in the Mishnah. Hafaras Nadarim kol hayom. The Hafaras Nadarim can only take place the entire day, meaning until nightfall, and that's it. Not 24 hours. V'yesh v'davar l'hakal hachmir. The Mishnah tells us sometimes there's a kulei and sometimes a chumrah, meaning sometimes he has a short window of opportunity to take to his wife's nether, and sometimes there's a longer period. Kate said, how's that? Nadra Leili Shabbos. It depends when she made her nether. If she made her nether Leili Shabbos, meaning Shabbos at night, then he has until tomorrow evening to attend to the nether. Mefer Leili Shabbos, V'yom Shabbos. He can be Mefer that night and the entire next day. Acha Techshach until nightfall. So this gives him a long period of time to take care of it. Nadra Chashecha, but if she made a nether right before nightfall, that leaves him a very small window of opportunity. Mefer Ashlei Techshach can only be Mefer before nightfall. Because if he hadn't taken care of it by the time nighttime arrives, he has no longer ability to be Mefer. So this Mishnah clearly tells us that Hafaras Nadarim does not extend for 24 hours. Rather, it ends at the end of that day. So this is a stira to what we just mentioned, that he has 24 hours. As the Gemara, you write, Tanoi, it's actually Machlekes Tanoim. What exactly is the time frame for Hafaras Nadarim? The sign is going to the price. Hafaras Nadarim kol hayom, the entire day, not 24 hours. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Lezer, Shimon Amru, me'es leis. He has 24 hours. So in summary, regarding tending to Nedarim on Shabbos, when it comes to She'ela, which is called Hatoras Nedarim of Chacham, that can only be done if it is L'tzorech Shabbos. If it's impacting his Shabbos observance, for instance, he made a neder not to eat today, then the Chacham could take care of it on Shabbos. But otherwise, wait till after Shabbos. Regarding the hafara of a husband to his wife's nedarim, so according to the first version of the Gemara, that is only limited to L'tzorech Shabbos. According to the second version, it would appear that it really depends on the opinions regarding the general halacha. What is the time frame of hafaras nedarim? Because if it's me'es la'es, he has 24 hours to tend to that neder, then indeed we only allow him to take care of his wife's neder on Shabbos if it is L'tzorech Shabbos, because he'll still have time after Shabbos to take care of it. But according to the Shita, that hafaras nedarim only extends until the end of that day, which means until Motzei Shabbos. In which case, it is very important and crucial for him to tend to his wife's neder today on Shabbos. In this case, we allow him to be made for her neder even if it's shaloi L'tzorech HaShabbos. Continues the Gemara. V'nishol nedarim, if it's L'tzorech Shabbos. They ask the following question. We allow the Chacham to be mater neder, which is pertinent for Shabbos. Are we speaking strictly when this fellow had no ability, had no opportunity to ask the Chacham to do this on Erev Shabbos? He didn't have time, he couldn't find the Chacham. That's why we grant him this privilege and allowance. Or Dilma perhaps, even if he had ample opportunity to do it before Shabbos, he can proceed with this on Shabbos because it is relevant to Shabbos, it is Tzorech Shabbos. Toshma, the Askikule Rabbanon, the Rabbanon made themselves available to Rav Zutra, the son of Rav Zera, and they permitted his neder, even though it was a situation where he had ample opportunity to address this before Shabbos. Nevertheless, they veiled themselves and they were matter his neder, since it was important for Shabbos. Continues the Gemara. So we have that story where they plugged up the hole, the window, and they tied the thing with a reed grass. Now, what were the circumstances? What was the background behind that story? Omar Yehuda Marav, it was as follows. Hilkatik Tana, there was this small alleyway. Hilkatik Tana Hoysa ben Shnei Batim, between two homes. V'tuma Hoysa Sham, and there was Tuma present there. For instance, there was a mace there. V'gigis Sduka Munachas al Gaban. Now there was a oyel, there was a barrel. Gigis is a barrel. Stuka, which was split, had a hole, which was lying on top of the two homes, serving as a roof over the mace. Now, before the mace passed away, they quickly plugged up the window of the home there, because the oil has the ability to transfer that tumah throughout the roofed area and also into the home through the window. So they quickly preempted that by closing up the window. They closed up the mar, this window b'tafiach, with this kli. And then afterwards, when the mace died, they wanted to determine whether the entire roofed area under the gigis, the barrel, will transfer tumah throughout it. They wanted to know whether the hole was wide enough, because the mace was underneath that hole. So if that hole is a tefach wide, they split in the barrel the tefach wide, then the tumah simply goes up through that hole and doesn't spread throughout the oil. But if it's less than a tefach, then the tumah spreads throughout that roofed area. So they wanted to measure it. So what did they do? Megeda. They tied this megeda, this kli, which was a tefach wide, perfect dimension. They tied the gemi with this grass, and they didn't have direct access to that hole in the gigis, so they lowered it through the hole, laid out to determine im yesham begigis, but they have tefach and lav, to know whether or not in that gigis there is a hole which is a tefach wide, and this pertained to the halachas of tumah. Now, interesting, Rashi quotes a Mishnah in Ahalos, which discusses this concept of a hole, tefach or not a tefach, and Rashi adds with his utmost humility, he says, "V'ani lo yecholti lahavim bai." I didn't have the ability to comprehend exactly this halacha properly. Unbelievable, his anova. So in any case, he had some difficulty with this whole concept here, and actually Tosfos, Rabbeinu Tam, offers a lengthy explanation to explain this whole concept, this whole halacha. So in any case, these people, they plugged the hole and the window, they tied the thing with the gemi, and they lowered it through the hole to measure. Umedevreim lamadu, from their actions we learned, shepaikikin, one may plug the window, umaydidin, a measure of a cushion b'Shabbos and Taran Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Ula ikla lebeirish galusa. Ula visited the home of Reish Galusa. Chazi, he noticed l'Rabba bar Rav Huna, the Yaseh ba'avna d'maya. He noticed that Rav Huna was sitting in this bath full of water, in this barrel of water, and he was measuring the bath. Amar Leisa Ula told him, when did the Rabbanan allow measuring? Medida the mitzvah. Only if he's measuring for the sake of halacha, the sake of mitzvah. But just to measure for no reason, the law of mitzvah, mi amar, but if it's an un-mitzvah, unrelated to mitzvah, do they allow measuring on Shabbos? It's a weekday activity. How come you're measuring the bathtub? Amar Leisa, so he responded, my intent here is not to measure. I'm merely preoccupying myself. I have no intent on measuring, and therefore it's not considered to be Asr on Shabbos. Let's take a look at Rashi inside to realize from the bottom. So Rabbi Rav Huna was sitting ba'avna. Rashi says ba'avna is begigis malayamayim, this barrel full of water, and he said, I'm merely preoccupying myself for no special reason, no special need. Merely to preoccupy myself, to keep myself busy. Now, why was he looking to keep himself busy? So the Ben Yoyada says a beautiful word. He says that he was trying to keep his mind off Torah learning. He was sitting in this bathtub. He wanted to divert his mind from Torah. Therefore, he found some sort of random activity to divert his mind and keep it from gravitating to Torah thoughts. Okay, time for a brief review of today's daf. We began with a discussion of different categories of muktzah. We have muktzah machmas due to the fact that it's eini muchan, it's unprepared for this use. We have muktzah machmas mius, repulsiveness. Machmas isser, it's designated and it was used for isser. We have muktzah machmas chesar and kiss, something which is delicate and fragile, and due to its value, one would not divert it and use it for its inappropriate use. We have muktzah machmas gufay, something which is inherently useless, like a pebble, like a coin. Rabbi Yehuda maintains all these things are considered muktzah. Reb Shimon says all are mutter, except something which is inherently useless or inherently unsuitable, like muktzah machmas and kiss or muktzah machmas gufay. The Gemara concludes, Rabbi Yochanan tells us to follow Reb Shimon's view. The Gemara concludes that we follow Reb Shimon in all types of muktzah, except for either muktzah machmas mius or muktzah machmas isser. Regarding tending to vows on Shabbos, we have two types of attending to nidar. We have a Torah's chacham, where a person approaches a chacham to permit his nether. That is only allowed if it's for the sake of Shabbos. We have a fora, where the husband tends to his wife nether. So according to the first approach in the Gemara, that is only allowed if it's a tzorech Shabbos, if it impacts Shabbos. For instance, she made a nether not to eat on Shabbos. According to the second approach in the Gemara, it depends on the various shittas of what is a person's time frame, time allowance to tend to his wife's nether. If he has 24 hours, then he cannot tend to the nether on Shabbos unless it impacts Shabbos, unless it's a tzorech Shabbos. But if the limitation is only kol hayom, he only has that day as the maximum allowance to tend to his wife's nether, then he can tend to his wife's nether on Shabbos, even if it's shlo tzorech. The Gemara proceeded to tell us that a chacham can be matir a nether which is tzorech Shabbos, even in the event where the individual had ample opportunity to take care of his nether before Shabbos, because ultimately it's for the sake of benefit of Shabbos. The Gemara concluded that one may shutter a window on Shabbos, and regarding taking measurements on Shabbos, that is mutter, if it's for the sake of halacha or for the sake of mitzvah. Hadran aloch mishahechshich, uslik alo mesechas Shabbos, mazel tov, mazel tov. I would like to take this opportunity to express my utmost appreciation. Hakaras hatov to Hashem Yisbarach for giving me the opportunity to learn together with you day after day, such a wonderful group of friends, such a chashuv ha'olam. Also, much appreciation to our group here at LIVEDAF, who very ably keep us on air, learning together day after day, under all circumstances, rain or shine, sun or sleet, to learn together, daf after daf, with such a wonderful, special olam. May Hashem give us the opportunity to continue learning together many more masechtas in good health, b'simcha. And should you have any suggestion, any personal request on how we can improve the shiur, please don't hesitate to drop us a line. Perhaps there's a specific feature you'd like us to add for your benefit. Please be in touch. In addition, you may have noticed that the public commenting area, the public posting area is relocated now and is on the actual page of the shiur. It's right underneath the player. It's meant to afford all of you opportunity to perhaps post a thought, a kasha, a chiddush, for the sake of all of us, to share with all of us. Please don't hesitate. We welcome any comment, any chiddush, any insight. La hagdil ter, la hadir. And Hashem help us continue learning B'simcha b'tov leva. Mazel tov, mazel tov.
No gilden no was is the so is hot to you go. Kilo no was the yo. No gilden no was